Okay, so Madame's turning out to be kind of a pain in the neck to Isabel. She went up and down the stairs, what, 4 times in the last chapter to get Madame's sheets warm. All right, so Isabel's not too happy. Remember, Lady Seymour's been moved downstairs so that Madame can have her bigger, better bedroom back that Lady Seymour was in. The sun rose bright the next day, catching in the icicles that hung from the eaves and jumping off the snow like a mirror. The linens pegged out on the line were frozen stiff as wood and covered in a lacework of ice. The clouds scuttled away and the sun blazed, turning the yard into a garden of jewels. Ruth would love this, I thought. If we were free and at home in Rhode Island, and there were our sheets out and our laundry lines and our snow. And these were our sheets and our laundry lines and our snow, she would dance like an angel. The picture in my brain pan caught me by surprise. I could not clear them away. She'd clap her hands at the sight of the frozen laundry. She'd twirl in the spinning swirls of snow that lifted in the breeze. She'd plunge her hands into the bushes to pluck off the diamonds of snow. She would do all these things and laugh and... Oh, she's thinking of Ruth. The wind tossed a handful of snow in my face and washed it all away. Ruth would not see this. Never. I dried my face. Why was I thinking of Ruth? I had worked hard to pack her away from my mind, along with the thoughts of Mama and Papa, and the life Ruth and I were promised. It didn't help to ponder things that were forever gone. It only made a body restless and fill up with bees, all wanting to sting something. I kicked at the new snow. It rose up, a sparkling diamond breeze fit for a queen. 'Twas Lady Seymour who did it, her with her begging forgiveness for not buying me and telling me I'd have been a good slave for her with her wet eyes and skeleton hands. Did she never think about setting me free? That would be a fine question to ask. Of course, there was no sense asking it because her mouth didn't work anymore. Sounds like Lady Seymour had some kind of a stroke. So she's kind of paralyzed on one side now. I carried the big laundry basket out to the sheets that I'd have to hang them in the kitchen or else they wouldn't dry until spring because it's so cold out. Another picture hung itself in my mind, the poetry book in the stationer's shop, the one I had been afraid to read. Miss Phyllis Wheatley went free when her master released her. 'Twas on account of her fame, Mamma said. Master Wheatley looked the fool for keeping a poetical genius enslaved in his household. I had heard of other slaves who bought their freedom, folks who were given their Sunday afternoons to work for themselves, who saved up their pennies for years and years until they had piled up the 150 or 200 pounds they needed to buy their body and soul from their master. If I had Sunday afternoons free, I'd figure a way to earn my pennies. I could sew or hire out to scrub stables. I'd even clean the cells of the Bridewell prison like that guard had asked me. I took a long stick from the pile of kindling wood. It would never happen. Madame would not allow it. She was set on keeping my arms and legs dancing to her tune and my soul bound in her chains. I pulled the stick back and cracked it against the side of the frozen bed linen. The ice shattered and fell to the ground, tinkling like little pieces of falling stars. Okay, so even though some slaves were able to save up money to buy themselves free, Isabel realizes that's never going to be her fate. Okay, chapter 42. Dr. Destouche visited Lady Seymour each morning and evening. She could nod her head yes and shake it no to his questions. Yes, she knew who she was. No, she had no sensation in her feet nor her hands. She could barely chew milk-soaked bread and sip broth. Her mind had not gone soft, though. Her eyes blazed bright in her skull and followed me as I moved around the room, and when the doctor and Madame talked, she listened in right close. Plainly said, she was as much a prisoner in her broken body as Curzon was in his cell. Madame's seamstress came near as frequent as the doctor. The birthday ball gown had a scarlet-red underskirt topped with a short gown of Royal Navy blue, embroidered with gold. The hairdresser and Madame spent hours consulting prints of fashionable ladies in Paris, so that they could design a suitable hairstyle for Madame. I was not privy to the details, but I heard Madame talking about jewels made of paste that would sit in her curls. She also wanted a small British flag to fly atop her locks, her curls, but the hairdresser talked her out of that idea. Hannah and Mary talked about the ball every waking minute. I'm sure even the Queen herself would have grown tired of hearing about it. At noon, the guns at the battery, which the British had taken to calling Fort George, would fire a royal salute. An hour later, the warships in the harbor would blast a response, and at 6 o'clock, the guests would arrive at the ball, with trumpets playing and drums beating a welcome. The dancing would last until midnight, when the fireworks would explode over the harbor. After that, the banquet would begin. Holy cow. There was no way under heaven that Madame would survive 6 hours of dancing without having something to eat. I finished reading the book Common Sense the night before the ball. The bookseller was right. The words were dangerous. Every one of them. I ought to throw it in the fire, but could not bring myself to do it. Mr. Payne, the author, knew how to stir up the pot. He went right after the king and attacked the crown on his head. I laid down one long road of a sentence in my remembering, and this was what I remembered from the book. For all men being originally equals, no one by birth could have a right to set up his own family in perpetual preference to all others forever. Way I saw it, Mr. Payne was saying that all people were the same, that no one deserved a crown or was born to be higher than another. That's why America could make its own freedom. 'Twas a wonder the book did not explode into flames in my hands. I buried the book back in its hidey hole and laid myself down to sleep. My eyes would not close. My thoughts were churned up like muddy water, with dangerous eels thrashing through it. If an entire nation could seek its freedom, why couldn't a girl? And if a girl was to seek her freedom, how could she do such a fool-headed thing, especially a girl trapped in New York? Best thing would be to break into the desk of a British commander, steal a pass, and forge her name and his name on it, and then act free. And pigs were likely to fly too, with that thought. Plus, that girl seeking freedom would have to walk. She could walk the mile from Wall Street to the north edge of the city, but then she'd run into the guards stationed there. She'd have to sneak past them and not get shot. Then she'd have 11 miles of running to the north edge of the island. If she took the Greenwich Road or the Post Road, she'd likely be captured by one in need of a slave or in need of the reward paid for a healthy runaway. If she stuck to the woods that ran up the center of the island, she could be eaten by a bear or drowned in a swamp. If angels guided her safe through the woods and she made the north edge, she'd have to get past the guards watching over King's Bridge, where New York Island touched the rest of America. I rolled over, my back to the fire. That girl could more likely grab hold of the feet of a passing crow and bid him fly her to safety. Better yet, sprout her own wings. So she's a little discouraged because all of the ideas she's come up with just couldn't possibly happen. The only path left was across the river. A girl like that could not swim and did not own a boat, not to mention the river currents were fast, and the crossing would be noted by someone. She would raise a ruckus, and then the soldiers would line up like a firing squad and shoot that girl dead in the water. They wouldn't even bury her properly. They'd just let the water take the boat and the body, and both would be consumed by sea monsters. I fell asleep cursing them that planted the city of New York on an island. So, just having all these really bad thoughts, like sea monsters, which we know aren't true. My dawn visits up the Commons had become the most ordinary of errands. Madame never woke early enough to note my absence, and the soldier wives were so grateful to avoid the chore of getting the water that they never told on me. Curzon had grown terribly thin and was still feverish, but his leg had healed up, and he greeted me at the window every day. After I left the prison, I'd fetch the water and head back to Wall Street, passing by the Golden Hill Tavern in case Captain Morse needed me, which he never, ever did. So when the captain signaled me from the tavern porch the next morning, I was surprised. I had not seen him for weeks, not since the news of the rebel victory at Trenton. "Good day, Just Sal," he said with a sleepy smile. "How do you fare?" "Good enough, sir," I said. "Is something amiss?" He winced and pulled his coat tighter. "Nothing grave, no news of battle or prisoner exchange." I waited while he sought his words. "I'm in need of a favor," he finally said. "It's of no worldly importance, but it is a matter of honor for me." "Sir?" I asked. "I must repay a debt, Just Sal. I wagered Captain William Ferrer that the British would not dare hold this ridiculous birthday celebration. It's a slap in the face to the people who are starving, you know." "Yes, sir," I said. He frowned and kicked at a stone poking up from the half-frozen mud. "But I'm proven wrong, aren't I? Thousands of pounds are being wasted, and so I owe my friend Captain Ferrer a penny. A gentleman always pays his debts promptly, be they large or small." I was confuddled. "And you want that I should—" He threw up his hands in frustration. "The British had confined all American officers to their lodging houses today." "Why?" "They fear we might mount an insurrection while they are dancing minuets and gorging on stuffed goose. They have a point. The ball would provide the perfect cover for a surprise attack if Washington were nearby. So I am prevented from making good on my bet to William, and he is prevented from coming round to collect his due. 'Tis a small matter of honor, to be sure, but when in reduced circumstances, these things take on greater weight, don't you think?" Still confuddled, I nodded my head. Yes, sir." "Good. Then you'll do it?" "Do what?" "Take the penny to William with my salutations. It will give him a good laugh. He lives on Chapel Street, a house with red shutters on the corner of Warren. Say you'll do it for me, Just Sal, and the next penny I earn goes into your pocket upon my word." Madam would be wig deep in preparations for the ball all day. The soldier wives would too, for they belonged to the army of servants who would work at the birthday party. Lady Seymour required only a warm fire and occasional help with the teacup. A walk up Warren Street on a sunny day such as this would be most welcome. "Happy to help, Captain," I said. The roar of cannon shook the kitchen just after midday and made me near jump out of my skin. I dropped the turnip I was peeling, and it rolled across the floor. "What was that?" I asked, clutching the table. "Are we under attack?" Hannah laughed and used the poker to push the logs to the back of the hearth. "No, you goose! That's the royal salute for Her Majesty the Queen." Mary pressed the hot iron against the apron on the table. "Do you figure they might need us early?" "The Major said 5 o'clock, Hannah said. "Give us time to finish up here." "Will you get to see the dancing?" I asked. "Nah," Mary said. "They'll be too busy running us ragged, setting up the dinner. But they've promised to feed us good." She picked up the apron and studied it for wrinkles. "I wish my mother could see this, me serving at the Queen's birthday ball." "Too bad your mother's on the other side of the globe with Her Majesty," Hannah said. "They'll both be tragical late to the party," Mary giggled. All right, so I'm going to stop there, and we'll finish up this chapter in the next reading. Okay.